Hello, Evelyn CPA here. Learn how to complete your PPP loan forgiveness application in less than 1 hour. The very first tab of the template, which will help you complete your loan application in less than 1 hour, is the terms of use. Make sure you use that. Make sure you agree with the terms of use before you actually start using the template. Then we have the index. In the index, we see a list of topics that is covered in this template. So the about which we just saw the data entry, all data is done in this tab. So you don't have to worry about going to different tabs, entering information. Any data that needs to be entered is on the data entry tab. Once you're done entering data, there's the dashboard, which shows you the key figures you need to look at. Then you can see the PPP forgiveness application, which you can now take that and copy in the application which you submit to the bank, the Schedule A and the Schedule A tables. This is the data entry tab. The yellow fields are data that is required, and the green field is optional. This data entries tab is divided into sections. Section 1 requires general information. Section 2 is information that will help you compute your select your covered period. Section 3A is Table 1 for Schedule A, part of information, and there's 3B, which is the salary hourly wage reduction calculations for Table 1. Then we have Section 4, which is the FTE calculations. And then we have Section 5, which is for employees making over $100,000, which is your Table 2. We have Section 6, which is employee benefits, and Section 7, compensation to owners, and Section 8, other expenses. So as you can see, all the data you need to enter is right here on this tab. Next, we'll go section by section to show you how to enter data for one employee. Section 1. The green information is not any information that will really change your computation. You can choose to enter it just to have a complete PPP forgiveness application in the Excel, or you can just choose to ignore it and just enter it straight into your application. It's not really required for you to enter it here. But the yellow fields are fields that is actually required. So for example, this employee, this business owner right here has a business loan of a PPP loan of $20,000. The disbursement date was 3/15/2020. The first payroll date was 3/18/2020. He had one employee at the time of application and one employee at the time of forgiveness. And then he runs his payroll biweekly. Section 2 is choosing your covered period. So you have the option to do 8 weeks or 24 weeks. I recommend that you try the 8 weeks first, and if you cannot get full forgiveness using 8 weeks, then try the 24-week period. So to elect the 8-week window, because by default the program is going to compute based on 24 weeks, choose this button so it computes your computation based on the 8-week, and then check here to use your first payroll date as a start date. So I recommend you check in this box if the date you start your payroll is significantly different from the date where you received your PPP loan. For example, let's say you received your PPP loan on 3/15, but your first payroll was not like until 3/22. Well, you don't want your 8-week window to start running from 3/15. It's better it runs from 3/22 so you have more time to really actually reach full forgiveness. So check this box if the date that you run your first payroll and the date you receive your loan is significantly different. If you're a seasonal employer, check this box. And basically, if you're a seasonal employee, you can use any 12 consecutive weeks period between May 1, 2019 and September 15, 2019 as part of your computation for your PPP loan. So if that's the date, just choose the first date you would like to use for computation to figure out what your FTE will be. So now let's talk about Section 3A, which is Table 1 of your Schedule A. And basically with this table, what we're trying to do is we're trying to gather information to see how much you were compensated, how much you compensated your employees during the period, your forgiveness period. So if you chose, in this case, we chose 8 weeks, and the loan was taken 3/18. So we want to see what's the compensation between 3/18 and 5/12, which would be 8 weeks from the time we're running it from the first payroll. So here you want to enter your employee's name. Let's say your employee's name is ABC1. You don't have to enter an identifier. That's optional. So enter the average amount of hours they work per week between 3/18 and 5/12. So if this employee is very consistent in how many hours they work per week, it's very easy to figure that out. If they're full-time, it's 40. If they're part-time and the hours don't really fluctuate and it averages out to mostly 20, you can choose 20. But if they're big fluctuations, like maybe they're working 39 one week and then 29 the next week and then 10 the next week, it's kind of hard to average out to 20. So the best way to do that when the hours fluctuate a lot is to use this calculator help. So you get your payroll, you go to your payroll app, run payroll for these days between 318 and 512. It will tell you how many hours of work during those days. So let's say they work 280 hours between those days. So we can see that the average hours worked is 35. And then, so this is what we'll put here. We'll put 35 here. And then let's say within that period, the total cash compensation within this period was $12,000. And so that's it for Section 3A. Section 3B computes any salary or hourly wage reduction that should happen before your loan forgiveness is computed. So if you did not have any changes in salaries or wages as compared to the first quarter of the year, then go ahead and click this box and just skip this part. But if there's been fluctuation in your wages, you've hired, you've fired, you've reduced hours, you've increased pay, decreased pay, then you want to go through this exercise for each employee just to make sure that your salary or hourly wage should not be reduced. So the first thing that says is enter average annual salary or hourly wage during March 18 and 5/12. That's a forgiveness period. So here we're looking for rate. The easiest way to compute this is to use the calculator. So that's column B between March 18 and 5/12. If I pull my payroll app, I run the payroll towards it during that period. During that period, I paid my employee $5,000. I have 320 hours. So the average rate is 1563. So I come here and I enter 1563. Then here it says enter average hourly salary between January 1 and March 31. So I go to my calculator, I look for the January 1 and March 31. I enter how much I paid them during that period. I paid them $5,000. They worked 520 hours. So it looks like my average rate during that period was $962. So I come here and I say $962. And then here, enter the annual salary of hourly wages of February 15th. Well, this is just one pay period. So basically you just have to pull that pay period and see how much you pay them. So let's say as of that period you pay them $12. Then it says enter average hourly salary rate between February 15, 2020 and April 26, 2020. So I go here, February 15, 2020, April 26, 2020. So maybe during that period I paid them $5,000. They worked 400 hours. So my rate at that point was $12.50. So I put the $12.50 here. And then enter the average annual salary wage as of the application submission date. So basically when you're going to submit the application, look at the rate you pay them at that point, and that's the rate. It's just one pay period, so it's very easy to compute. So you just say if you pay them, let's say at that rate, you pay them $7. I'm just making wild guess. You probably wouldn't have this much variation, but I'm doing this much variation just so for those with extreme circumstances, be able to figure out how to compute this. And then so let's say you fired your employee during this period and you made a good faith effort to try to rehire them, but they didn't come back, you check this box. But if that doesn't apply to you, leave that alone. If this is wage as opposed to salary, then click on this. If it's wage, enter what's the average number of weeks they work between 1/1 and 3/31. So let's say on average, you pull up your payroll record, look how many hours they work. So maybe they work 400 hours. And then, so it's going to tell you here the average hourly hours was 30.77. So you come here and enter the 30.77. Now, on the other hand, if they're salary workers, you put 26,000, you enter the annual rate, which is 26,000, you make sure this box is unchecked. I'll go ahead and delete that because we don't need that for this example. So Section 4 deals with other FTE calculations. So in Section 4, if you have not fired or reduced the number of hours paid between 1/1 and the end of the forgiveness period, so basically the period which you're applying for, then go ahead and check in. You can ignore this part. Also, you can also ignore this part. The green shaded portion of this part, if basically you had to shut your doors because due to the COVID-19 epidemic, that it was state mandated that you closed your doors. Then you can also check this box and skip the green shaded, but the yellow shaded still needs to be filled out regardless. So let's say for this example, I'm not going to meet any of these exemptions, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. And then in the first place, I have to enter the average number of hours worked between February 15, 2020 and April 26, 2020. So I can use my payroll calculator. And if I pull my payroll app, I can run this date and see how many hours were worked for this employees. So maybe they worked 320 hours. And so I can put my average hours worked is 32. And the same thing, February 15th, let's say they worked 70 hours. I can see the average hours worked will be 35. And then average hours worked as of the application date. So if I put, let's say they worked 70 hours there, and then I put 35 here, and then enter average hours worked between 1/1 and 2/29. So 1/1 and 2/29. So I run that payroll data in my payroll app. Maybe they worked 280 hours, so the average is 32.56. So I put that in here, and then average hour work between 2/15/2019 and 6/30/2019. So that's last year. Put my payroll app, run those dates, see how many hours they worked. So I put that in here, and the average is 35.42. I'm not a seasonal worker, so I can skip this part, so I don't have to worry about this part. For Section 5 is for employees who made over $100,000. Now, for this business, we don't have any employees who made over $100,000, so we are going to skip Section 5. But if you did, you put the employee's name, employee identifier, the compensation, and the average FTE. Probability is if they are making over $100,000, the FTE is going to be 1. So I'll suggest that you put 1 there. Section 6 is the employee benefits. Now, this does not include benefits to owners. All compensation to owners will be included in Section 7. So Section 6 is just for employees. So in this case, this employer paid $2,000 within the forgiveness window for the employee's health insurance, paid $500 for the retirement plan, and then paid another $1,200 for local taxes. In Section 7, this is where we put the owner's information. So the other sections we focused on employees. Now we're going to focus on the owner. So let's say the owner's name is BCD2. And between the forgiveness windows, they paid themselves $15,000. And then in 2019, they paid themselves a total of $45,000. So you can see how the program computes, like the max deduction they can get for this loan is $6,923 for their pay. Section 8 is other expenses. So in line 1, if you have a mortgage, you enter the amount of mortgage you had you pay between the forgiveness period. If you don't have a mortgage and you have rent, and let's say your rent is $1,000 a month, and so you would have paid, maybe you paid 3 months rent, so you put $3,000 there, and then utilities, maybe utilities were like $100 a month, and you paid 3 months, so that's $300. And that's the last piece of data you have to enter. Next, we look at the results. So all the information you enter flows into the PPP loan application. And so we can see our payroll costs, the business rent, utilities, and then we can see our expenses, all the reductions and advancements, adjustments have all been calculated for us. We can see we achieved full forgiveness. And then the dashboard even gives us a clearer picture of, we can see we got a loan of $20,000. We were fully forgiven. There was nothing for us to pay back. There was no salary wage reduction. So we restored all the salaries by the application submission date. So there were no reductions. Employee payroll and owner's payroll together made 81%. We're way above the 60%. And then other expenses were 19%. So that's it. In a nutshell, how to complete your PPP application in less than 1 hour.